Hey, hello, my name is Chelsea. I also go by Alex. I use all pronouns, and welcome to Nitty Literature. I apologize for if you hear like a water sloshing sound. It is 18 degrees in New York today, which is not that cold, but the wind chill is making it feel like 5 or 6 degrees, so it's very cold. So the heat is turned all the way up in this house. So I do apologize if you hear this sloshing. I'll try to edit it out or pause when it gets too loud. But hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in January. So since this is my first monthly book recap, I'm going to kind of explain how this is going to go down. So I'm going to go in chronological order, all the books that I read in January. I'll give them a star rating and a little summary / what I liked about them. If it's a book that you want to read, you have on your list, and you don't want to hear anything about, I'm going to have all of the timestamps in the thing, and I'll put the name of the book at the beginning of the timestamp. So if you don't want to hear about that book, just skip to the next one. We'll figure it out. It'll be fun. So, the first book that I read this year in January of 2023 was Galatea by Madeline Miller. I read Song of Achilles, in 2020, I think. I read Song of Achilles at the end of 2020, and I absolutely love the way that Madeline Miller writes. I haven't read Circe yet, but it is on my list, so we're gonna get there. But there's something about her writing that's just really poetic, and it's funny that she chooses to write about like Greek myths, or myths in general, because I think her writing style really reflects well towards that. This book is extremely short. 50 pages. This book is 50 pages, and they're these tiny little pages. It's a very, very short story. I'm from New Jersey. I live in New York. I live in Brooklyn, but my family is from New Jersey, so I was taking the train back home on January 2nd, I think. I wasn't taking the train back home. I was traveling in some capacity, and my train ride was like an hour, and I finished this in half of the train ride and then continued on to another book. So it was an extremely quick read, but I did really enjoy it. It's a really nice short story. It's the myth of Galatea and Pygmalion, both in kind of a reimagining. It's all about women and women's bodies and how we're made and shaped by men, and like the views and lenses of men, and that we don't have any actual authority over our own bodies, which is a lot, but yeah, it's about that. And Galatea wants to break free and save her daughter, so it's kind of her story of self-reliance and how she breaks free of the hold of this man who made her. So I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. Honestly, the reason that I didn't rank it higher is just because it's so short. So obviously there wasn't like a lot of world building, a lot of plot, a lot of character development, and those are a large part of what I like about most books. So I gave it 4 stars because I really liked the prose, and I really liked the story. I'm like a whore. Excuse me. I'm a whore for Greek mythology retellings and mythology retellings in general. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. If you're looking for an extremely short read, give Galatea a try. If you like Madeline Miller, if you like Song of Achilles. Okay, so Galatea was the only physical book that I read. The rest of these books are either audiobooks or ebooks, so I'm going to put little pictures of them. Not sure which side, but I'm going to put little pictures of the covers while I'm talking about them so you can see what I'm talking about. So the next book that I read is A Spindle, Splintered, which did take me a long time to be able to say. That's a tongue twister, by alix harrow. It is part 1 of a series of a bunch of fairy tale retellings. So this one is specifically about Sleeping Beauty. So basically the story follows a 21-year-old who has what's called generalized Roseville malady. So the story is set in the town of Roseville, and the water was contaminated, so all the pregnant women that were drinking the water, their children ended up with this malady that made it so they wouldn't live past 21. All of their cells start to mutate, and they've never seen one of these children live past 21. So the analogy through most of the book was having sort of a timeline put on your life, just like Aurora in Sleeping Beauty does, and she's not in charge of her story at all. She just, on her 16th birthday, she pricks her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and falls into sleep for 100 years. So a large part of this story is like a multiverse story, which was really cool. The main character travels to another realm where she meets another Sleeping Beauty who's cursed to fall asleep and she pricks her finger. And it kind of ends in this amalgamation of a bunch of Sleeping Beauties, and they all band together to break this one Aurora out of her story. Her name's not actually Aurora, but you know, the vibes. Yeah, I thought it was really sweet. I really liked it. It was a shorter book. It's only like 120 pages, so it was definitely shorter. The first two reads I had this year were pretty short, which I usually don't read, like short stories and novellas. But I did this year, so that was fun. I rated it a 3.75. It kind of falls into a similar thing of Galatea for me. It was just really short, and I did like the character development, because there was definitely character development, and I thought the plot was really interesting. But it just, like, it didn't have enough there. I also thought that Alix Harrow's writing style wasn't like necessarily what I usually go towards in books. Obviously I gave it a 3.75. I didn't dislike it. I liked it. But I am usually more of like a poetic, lyrical narrative style. That's what I enjoy. That's why I liked Galatea a little bit more than this one. So that is kind of why it got 2.5 less than Galatea, because they fell into a similar trap of like, they just weren't long enough to make a really lasting impact. But I liked the writing of Galatea a little more. So yeah, Splintered. And like I said, it's a series, so I'm actually really excited about continuing to read more books in the series, because I do like the world that the author built, and I'm excited to see it with more fairy tales. So vibes. Oh, I forgot to mention, I finished A Spindle Splintered in one day. I finished it on January 16th, so that's where this fell in my little month. So the next book I read is We Set the Dark on Fire by Tehlor Mejia. Everyone has told me to read this book. Everyone has told everyone to read this book. It's been raved about, and I know why. I really, really enjoyed it. So it's a duology. It's the first book of a duology. Basically, a little semblance of the plot. It is a romantic fantasy that is reminiscent of The Handmaid's Tale. So it is about this island where every political figure, every like important man in society has two wives. One wife to be the caretaker, have the children, take care of the house, do all of that stuff. And then the other wife to be sort of like a partner in crime for the husband. So does more of the politic stuff, does more of the like keeping charge of the household in terms of like hiring staff, doing all of that. So it's more of like a wife for pleasure and a wife for business. So it revolves around these two. This is like a big spoiler if you haven't read the book and you don't want to, or you do want to. The two wives that get assigned to the most powerful man on the island, they end up having some feelings for each other and falling in love. And there is this whole revolution plot where there is this underground sect of revolutionaries called Lavos, and they get one of these wives, the main character Danny, into all of their schemes and all of their like demonstrations and stuff, and she starts helping the revolution to immediately go against her husband, because he's a bad guy. He's not a good guy. So yeah, I really liked it. I thought the world building was really interesting. Basically the whole like first part of the book is explaining this whole two wives thing, because it has to do with like the mythology of the island and the god who formed the island having two wives for like the same reasons. So all of the like accomplished young women in this area go to a school for girls that teaches them how to be one of the wives, and the main character Dani is undocumented, so that's a huge part of why she joins Levos, because they give her documentation, which is what she needs to actually like go to the government complex and become the wife to this really powerful man. So it is a story about like immigration and documentation, as well as also being fantasy and romance, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think that maybe it deserves 4.75 because I did really like it, but I am very hesitant to give like anything a super high rating, because I'm like, well, what if I like something better? Then like I can't give it like 5.5 because that doesn't exist. So I gave it 4.5. I'm really curious to see where the sequel goes, because I'm really invested in Dani and Carmen's relationship, and the end of We Set the Dark on Fire is like a huge cliffhanger, and something that I saw coming, but like the way that the author did it was just like, oh my god, how are we going to remedy this in the next book? So I am excited to read the second one, and I think that could affect my ratings, but I gave it a 4.5. I really liked the prose. It just, again, like I was saying, for a Splintered, it wasn't like the poetic, flowery language that I usually gravitate towards, so that's why I gave it a 4.5, but I did really enjoy it, and I completely recommend it if you're looking for a sapphic book. I am giving so many thumbs up in this, I have to stop. I need to sit on my hands. I talk with my hands too much. I can't sit on my hands. Okay, so I was reading a Splintered. Well, okay. I'm insane. I read multiple books at a time. I started reading We Set the Dark on Fire before I read a Splintered. Then I read and finished a Splintered. And then the next day, I finished We Set the Dark on Fire. So I finished We Set the Dark on Fire on January 17th, the day after I finished the last book. So I like to keep track of when I finish these things. I think it's fun. So the next book that I read in January is The Witches of Moonshyne Manor by Bianca Marais. Y'all! I started reading this book back in, October or November. I was reading it for spooky season, and then I put it down and never picked it back up again, but it's not because I didn't like it. I really enjoyed it. I just didn't, there were other things to read, and I got distracted. So I finally picked it back up in January and finished the book, which is great because I really liked it. So The Witches of Moonshyne Manor is about a coven of sister witches, that were basically all orphans. They were all given up or orphans, and this woman took them in and made them kind of a coven. So they live in this big house called Moonshyne Manor, and they're all like in their 80s, but the story kind of jumps back and forth between them all in their 80s and them in their 50s when like a big, huge event happened that changed the course of all their lives. So they are just like a bunch of like elderly sister witches, and the whole conflict of the book is they owe the bank a bunch of money, and the bank's gonna foreclose on their house so that the men in the town over can build like a men's complex with like shooting and capitalism and the patriarchy. So the whole book is about them trying to figure their way out of this like tricky financial situation, and there is the thing that happened when they were all a little bit younger, 30 years before the actual events of the book, involves some accidental murder and miscommunication and one of the sisters that went to jail hiding a bunch of artifacts that would have made them a lot of money. So they are trying to find out where the sister hid the artifacts, and then when she comes back, she like loses she has lost a bunch of her memory, so she doesn't know where she hid them. And a large part of the book is just like trying to figure out, and are they going to save the house? Are they not? And there's also really cool trans and gender fluid representation. As a gender fluid person, I was like, Ruby! I'm not gonna quite spoil the ending of the book because it did give me like the happies. It gave me such big happies. But it's just too good. You have to experience it yourself. But really great trans and gender fluid representation that made me happy. And the community within all the sisters is like so refreshing to read. It's so nice. Like, this book is spooky in the fact that they're witches, but it's not spooky at all. It's like really heartwarming, and it's just about like female friendships, and it was really, really cute. So I also rated this a 4.5. I liked this on the same level as I liked We Set the Dark on Fire. I really, really enjoyed both of them, so that's why I give them the same rating. I really liked a lot of the way that Bianca Marais structured this novel. So at the beginning of each chapter, you get like when the chapter is happening, like this day at this time, blah, 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 blah. And then you also get a page from their grimoire, all the sisters' grimoire. So there's a whole bunch of like different potions that usually have something to do with the chapter. And I thought that was really fun. I enjoyed reading that. I love when books have like little silly things thrown in like that add to the ambiance of the book. So I really enjoyed that. So yeah, that is the book that I read next. I finished that on January 23rd. So getting towards the end. The last book I finished in January is The House in the Cerulean Sea. So if you saw my last video, you'll know that Under the Whispering Door was my favorite book of 2022. It was also the first TJ Klune book I ever read. So I was like, damn, I really like the way this guy writes prose, and I think that his stories are really cute. So I have heard like everyone talk about House in the Cerulean Sea. I got recommended it by some friends. I've seen it everywhere. So I decided that I had to read it. It is really cute. It's definitely darker and sadder at moments, but it's largely about this orphanage for magical children, and the caseworker that gets sent to check to make sure that the orphanage is like up and running and up to code. So this caseworker goes to an island where there's a house on the Cerulean Sea and meets a whole bunch of magical children. One of them is the Antichrist. Oh, I love Lucy. One of them is the Antichrist. There's a gnome, there's a fae, there's all of these magical children, and the man who runs the orphanage, Arthur, which this is a spoiler. Oh my god, this is a spoiler. Who's a phoenix. So the whole experiment of this orphanage was to see if a magical creature could run a house for magical youth. So this caseworker comes in and doesn't know what he's in for, is just told that it's highly classified and that he has to write his report and give his recommendation on whether the orphanage should close or not. And of course, the caseworker and the head of the orphanage, hearts. Yeah, it's a really cute book about found family, and it talks a lot about rejecting capitalism and like work culture, and like doing a job that you don't know why you're doing the things that you're doing, and once you figure it out, you realize that you can't believe in this anymore and you have to do something else. So I'm gonna say it again. I gave this book a 4.75. Could not commit to giving it a 5 because in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I liked Under the Whispering Door more, and that was a 5-star. So if I liked a book by the same author a little bit less, it shouldn't also be 5 star. So I gave it 4.75. I thought the cast of characters was really cute. All of the children were adorable. Sal's whole arc was heartbreaking, but also like heartwarming at the same time. Like, so yeah, I recommended that book for a little MLM romance. Most of the time I read WLW romance, but I really enjoyed this. I just really like the way TJ Klune writes. I think he has another book coming out soon, so I'm gonna have to read that, and then I'm gonna have to see all of his other stuff and see what I should read from there. Okay, so I read 5 books in January. I was off to a little bit of a slow start, but I'm not even joking. I have 5 books that I'm currently reading that will all be done in February. So that's not even like things that I have not started yet. So February will definitely have more. I think it's mainly because I set some of these goals up for reading for January, like in the middle of January. So it took me a while to get started on them. But yeah, those are all the books I read in January. For February, since it's Black History Month, I want to read all books by Black authors. The ones that I'm currently reading won't contribute to that because I'm already reading them and I would like to finish them. So they won't be a part of that, but all of the new books that I pick up in February will be written by Black authors for Black History Month. So that is something that I'm doing for February. Just a little sneak preview. The first one that I picked out was Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. So I will let you know about that one in next month's book review, book recap, monthly, whatever this is called. You know what I mean. But yeah, that's January. That's a little look into February. I would recommend every single book that I read this month. I liked them all. I finished them all. I rated them all at least 4, if not extremely close to 4 stars. So yeah, it was a good month of reading for sure. This is only the first month of these monthly book reviews, so make sure to stick around if you want to hear about how February goes for me and how the rest of the year goes for me, because it's going to be a good year for reading, folks. So, thanks for hanging out. If you've watched this far, you're sick. Leave in the comments any moral quandaries, dilemmas, questions you might have for me, or any things you want me to make a video on. I have some videos planned and coming up, so that'll be super fun. I'm gonna have to do a knitting podcast very soon. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.